get my 6. What's up, everybody? Bigfoot Sasquatch do not care about your stick figure family, brah. But perhaps him, her, it, or they will care enough about mine to come deliver a special message today, because today is a very special day for the Lake household. Welcome, of course, to Homesteading Off the Grid, the most amazing homesteading channel on the entire internet, in the universe, that typically doesn't have anything whatsoever to do with homesteading. But today, aside from being a beautiful, lovely October midday, it's my beautiful bride, Dearly, aka Giggly Girl's birthday. She's 38 today as of this recording, and ironically, she's got a little sister who turns 33 today. They're born on the same day, and it's so awesome because my little sister-in-law, she's one of my favorite of the 10 in-laws. I have brothers and sisters-in-law. There were actually 12 siblings in Dearly's family. 2 of them's passed on. I never forget my wife's birthday because Mary Jane, the little sister, contacts me immediately and asks me what I got her for her birthday. I give you a hint. Every year it starts with an M and ends with an unny. Yeah, but she's a sweet kid. Gosh, in her 30s now, I can't believe it. She stayed with us when she was a teenager, and we lived over there in the Philippines. So anyway, yeah, it's Dearly's birthday, and so I'm going to be reading a very special story today from October Nights, Part 1. You've probably heard it before if you've been following the channel for a while. It's called The Writer's Wife. And who do you think it's about? Well, it's about my beautiful bride, Dearly, aka Giggly Girl. And I just caught this. I should have thought better because it's the 18th. I put it in for the October the 26th story because, you know, there's one short story for every day of October. And, of course, there's part 2, 31 more stories for the Halloween season. Both are available in print and Kindle on Amazon. Or you can get, these are sold out from our Etsy store. You can get autographed copies of part 2 from our Etsy store. The links to both of those places are below. But with each passing year, this story becomes more and more special to me. As you'll hear the story, as it was written 6 years ago or so, I think I wrote this book, this short story collection, over a period of about 2 years. So I published it 6 years ago. It takes on even more meaning because this story will give credit where credit is due, in that Dearly really, without her encouraging me back 15 years ago when all this started, I would not have made it to where I am today. Not just with as a writer, and not just as a social media content creator. I wouldn't be alive. I know that, but I am, and I have also come to see that I wouldn't have made it to the level I have in that which I do if it hadn't been for her continued support in all ways. Listen, I'm going to throw this out there for you. There's a lot of people who try to do what I do. And I've helped friends of mine to try to do what I do. Be it, just the social media content creation. Now, of course, somebody wants to be a writer. That's a whole nother ball of wax. But as far as just maybe starting a YouTube channel, creating a Facebook page, and trying to reach monetization, trying to be consistent and persistent long enough to create enough content for a long enough period of a time to where you actually become monetized. And then past that point, once you actually make bank. And I mentioned in the video yesterday, I'll say it again, we are now in the top 1% of all income earners in this country. And it's only because of my beautiful bride, Dearly, aka Giggly Girl, being exactly who she is and supporting me in the ways in which she supports me. And I've come to realize this is the secret weapon. This is a superpower I have that many of my friends who are smarter than me, better looking than me, have more energy than me, this is why they can't do what I do, because they don't have that back office support, I'll refer to it as, that I have with Dearly. Now, there is nothing submissive about my wife. You know, we get that a lot. Oh, she's Asian, she's younger than you, it's her culture, she's submissive. Let me tell you, you piss her off, you're going to find out how submissive she is. She's not submissive by any means. She is, however, traditional, and we have a very traditional marriage. That's not very popular in current American culture, especially in our demographic. We're in the upper middle class. We've passed that, but we live in an area that's like upper middle class, affluent. We've kind of hopped from one to the other, but it's not popular because what's popular here is strong, independent women who work, who have careers and blah, 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 and who aren't meant to spend their time in the bedroom, in the kitchen. And yeah, I have kids, but I didn't have them so I could be a babysitter and blah, blah, blah. And listen, there is no way that any of my friends, my guy, and these are guy friends I've tried to help, and I've got female friends that I would help if they reached out to. It's always been guys. They're like, dude, I hate my job. It's killing me. I would like to do something like you do. So at least listen, someone told me this many years ago when I was in business. I used to be a stockbroker. I did that for eight years, and I learned the importance of time management and distraction elimination, minimization and elimination entirely if you can. It's even better to where it's part of my core, and I practice it in my business. It's what I do. There are certain things I have to do every day. I have to get these things done. If I don't get them done, I'm not going to generate the revenue that it is my goal daily to generate. And that number puts me in that top 1%. Everybody has the same 24 hours in a day. The difference between those of us that make, and the number is to be in that top 1%, you got to make $739,000 a year or more. And we're over that. We're over 7 digits now. For the first time, we've been progressively climbing towards that year after year after year. I've been doing this for 15 years. This is our first year to go over 7 digits for annual income. To get there, you must manage your time like the CEO of the world's largest bank, and you must not just minimize your distractions, you must eliminate them and get rid of them, okay? And you've got to be staunch about it. So I know there are certain things I must do every day to hit those numbers. I put them on the front burner, okay? This is why I get up before 5 a.m. every morning, to include today, which is a Saturday, and it's my wife's birthday party. So you better believe I got up by 4 a.m. this morning to get to work on these things, to get these things done before I started helping her with final preparations for the party, and then, of course, being co-host of the party. There are 24 hours in a day. Everybody has that same 24 hours in a day. The difference between the guy that makes $1 million a year and the guy that doesn't is how those guys choose to spend those 24 hours in their day. And it doesn't just come down to getting up at 4:30 in the morning and getting more work done by the time the sun comes up than 90% of the American working class population ever will all day anyway. It's so much more than that, because there are things that have to be done, especially when you have a family. I'm a married man. I have a wife. We have a son. We have to eat, which means somebody has to cook. We need groceries to do that. Somebody's got to clean up after that. We have to wear clothes. Laundry's got to be done. They're just domestic type chores. I'll call it that. If I spent my time doing those things, I would not make more than $1 million a year. My beautiful bride dearly, aka a giggly girl, who is not submissive, even 1% of her body is not submissive. She's very domestic. She not only doesn't mind doing all that stuff, she enjoys doing it. And she knows in her head that if she does all that, so I don't have to, and all I have to do is make money, that I'm going to make money. And I clearly make a lot of it. Now, if my spouse, and I was married once before, and my first wife was not a bad person at all. She was a good person. She was a wonderful person. We were just not a good mix. I was a stockbroker back then. I sucked. I understood the job. I was good at sales. But I spent a very large portion of my day doing the cooking, doing the cleaning, running the kids here, running the kids there, doing all these things, because she was a strong, independent woman, and she just wasn't going to do those things. It was better for her to sleep in the mornings and allow me to take the kids to daycare or to preschool, so she could get an extra 45 minutes of sleep. And then me try to rush back to my brokerage office and get there and beat the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange. Usually I had a customer waiting on me, and I was frantic from being Mr. Mom before the market even opened. And no wonder I didn't really make it there. Now I don't have to worry about all that. And if I try to do a lot of that stuff, my beautiful bride dearly, aka Giggly Girl, she says, "Hon, let me do this. Go do what you do so we can keep living the life we have," which is spending winters in tropical paradises. We're getting ready to go to the Philippines this winter. Going to be over there with family for Christmas, which is buying a house in the Philippines, almost literally months from now, having our 5.5, 6 acre home and property and home in Virginia paid for, the last little bit of debt we have, the last payment eliminated, and she's turning 38 today. Can you imagine that? They say behind every great man is a great woman. In my situation, that is the truth. That is a case in point, and I'm going to get to the story here in a minute. Sadly, what I've seen is that behind a lot of men who could have been great, and behind a lot of women who could have been great too, is a partner who just doesn't support them enough to give them the flexibility, the freedom, and the time to focus on the activities that they need to do daily to be successful as they can be. If you're running kids to activities, if you're cooking, if you're doing chores around the house, you will never catch up to me when it comes to a revenue versus revenue comparison. It's never going to happen. Okay? And it's not because I'm great. It's because my wife is. And with no further ado, as that beautiful woman would say, I'm going to get to the story. And 1,000% of this story, just as everything I just told you, is true. The writer's wife. This story is true, like I just said. It has nothing to do with Halloween, perhaps other than the fact that if it hadn't happened, you wouldn't be reading this collection of Halloween-flavored short stories right now. Plus, ironically, it does begin in October. October 2011. I'd gone back and forth from the Philippines to the U.S. a few times, all in ill attempts to grab and retain virtually any form of gainful employment in the U.S., which would allow me to bring my beautiful bride dearly and our then only months-old son Daniel to the U.S. with me and give them the best possible life I could give them. The long and short of it is that it didn't work out. I had several strikes going against me. One, it was during the Great Recession. Two, I'd previously been a securities dealer and my Series 7 securities license had lapsed while I was away fighting a war in Iraq. And no, that carried no leverage when trying to get on with any of the firms I called on after I got back. All they cared about was that my license had expired. They didn't give a damn where I was and what I was doing when it did. Three, I was strung out on more dope by way of the Army Hospital and Veterans Administration after sustaining several injuries in Iraq, which led me to taking anything I could get my hands on, all of which made me not quite the guy at the top of anyone's hiring list. I was strung out on meds, pills, drinking on top of it. I was a mess. I wouldn't have hired me. Out of options, I wasn't about to stay in the U.S. alone and send money back to take care of my family and hope everything worked out. You see, my wife and son were living in Mindanao, the southernmost island in the Philippines, an island riddled with multiple terrorist networks who specialize in kidnappings for ransom. And since my son was half white, he had a huge target on his head at all times. It was very common in Mindanao for people to keep their eyes on children whose fathers were from the West, and even taxi drivers who were not part of any terrorist network would kidnap these kids once the fathers left the country, viewing it as easy money. Nannies and housekeepers did it all the time. I went back to Mindanao to be with my family. At least if I were there, someone would have to go through me to get to my son, and let me tell you, that translates to someone would have to kill me to get to my son. And just as the terrorists in Iraq had found out, I don't die easily. When I got back to Mindanao, we left Davao City, where I'd always stayed with dearly before, and we went back to her province, which I'll not name here so as not to put any targets on any of her relatives' heads. We figured her large family would be a big help with our baby, and we were right, as family is still important in Philippines culture, much like it used to be here in the U.S. It didn't take long before I sunk into a pretty deep depression. I was living in the jungle with no electricity or running water. We had a 9-month-old baby we were feeding off of roots and other wild edibles we could dig up in the jungle, and an ever constant supply of fish and squid I would get from the fishermen whom I helped carry boats in from the sea in the mornings when they returned from the night's fishing. Anyone who shows up to help pull the boats is given a handful of fish or squid by the fishermen they help. At first, no one would give me any fish or squid because they assumed that since I was an American, I had to be rich and I didn't need the food. They couldn't understand why I even worked. In their minds, Americans don't need to work because they're all already rich. They believe our government just sends us all a check every week. Sadly, the majority of folks over there in all third world countries around the world actually think that. And I've been in over 20 countries, folks, so I speak from experience, not opinion, okay? However, once these fishermen saw me day after day and they began giving me free fish and squid, and to their character, they gave me more than the locals. You big Americano, they would say, need eat more food. One night, while drunk on tuba, a wine made out of the sap from a coconut tree that tastes like table vinegar, and crying about how I hated my life, Dearly asked me what we could do to get to America. The economy's in the shitter, I told her. I've burned every bridge I ever had. The only way we could get there and raise our kid there and have good lives is if I were to make it as a writer. Then make it as a writer, she said. That's crazy, I told her. Do you know how many writers actually make enough money to live off of their writing? No, she said. Neither do I said, after stopping to think about it for a minute. But I'm sure it's just a few. Then become one of the few, she said. What struck me about this whole conversation was how easily she thought I could do it. Did she really believe in me this much, or was this one of those ignorance is bliss moments? I'm certainly not disrespecting my wife by saying this, but here she was, a third world poor 23-year-old girl who'd grown up in a small fishing village in the jungle, who'd probably never used the internet until she went to Davao City to attend college for the few years that she could afford to do so, by way of a not-so-poor grandmother who, by the way, quit paying her tuition, which was roughly $250 US per semester, and kicked her out when she found out she was dating an American. Why should she help support her? She had a rich Americano boyfriend. And no, Dearly never was able to go back and finish college because no, her rich Americano boyfriend wasn't so rich after all. Anyway, the next morning, while trying to sleep off a tuba hangover, which let me tell you is worse than a Schlitz malt liquor hangover, by far, I got my answer. She believed in me. Wake up, she said. I opened my eyes and looked up and I saw my beautiful bride standing in the doorway. She had a notebook in one hand and 3 ink pens in the other. She threw it all on the bed and said, "Write." We had no computer. We had no internet. We had nothing. But Dearly had scrounged what few pesos we had, walked half a mile down the hill to the road, paid half of what we had to a tricycle driver who took her 2 miles into the closest thing resembling a town and back, and used the other half of what we had to buy me a notebook and 3 ink pens so I could write. And with those pens, I wrote until my hands cramped. And in that notebook, I hand wrote a novel called Off Switch. That's me, by the way, in my gunner's turret in Iraq. Available on Amazon in print and Kindle, or with an autograph from our Etsy store. The links are in the description box below. I would spend months going to an internet cafe, renting a computer for 15 pesos an hour, roughly 40 cents, when we had the money, to type it into a Word document. And these months were interspersed with weeks when we didn't have the money for me to rent computer time. Folks, we had no safety net, and this is something else. I'm going to get back to the story. This is another reason why I say often, I believe when you come from nothing, you are more likely to become affluent like we have done than you are if you come from the middle class. If you come from comfort, and all you've ever known is comfort, and you're afraid you're going to lose your stuff, you're not willing to take chances. You're not willing to take risks other people won't take. But when you have nothing to lose, you're the hardest man to beat, because there's nowhere to go but up. And you have to take those chances or you don't eat. And the whole time I was in those internet cafes, back to the story, I was harassed by the locals because my nose was too long, my arms were so hairy, and my skin was so white. But I persevered because my wife wouldn't let me quit. Not only did she tell me, hey, take the kid here, or watch the kid so I can sleep in, or, you clean up after I cook, or you do the cooking. She was like, no, I'm doing all this. You do what you do, and that's right, so we can get the life we want. That is spousal support. And, well, we're getting to it. I'm going to let you know how much I support her now. I'm tell you what I got her for her birthday. It's coming. It was a long, hard climb, but we made it. Eventually, and after being taken advantage of by a lot of douchebags in the mainstream media and the internet blogging world who would publish my work without paying me, Joe the plumber, who's not really a plumber and whose name isn't even Joe, and Alex Jones, who's an effing nutcase, or two, just to name two, I finally started getting paid for my writing from afar, and in time, I was earning enough money from writing to come back to America, get an apartment, a car, furniture, and begin the visa process to bring my wife to America. She and our son stayed back for 6 months without me while I was in the U.S. doing this. I moved them across town once in Mindanao when we had a confirmed kidnapping plot on my son. And when we got word of another, I moved them to Manila, where they lived for 3 months alone until I returned to be with them for another 6 months before we came to the U.S. to live happily ever after, which exactly is what we've been doing. The reason I'm writing this story and including it in this anthology is because my wife dearly and our son Daniel deserve to have the story told, and they deserve to have it preserved. The only reason I'm alive right now, the only reason I didn't drink and drug myself to death, or like far too many other veterans with PTSD, like myself, the only reason I didn't commit suicide is because of Dearly and Daniel. These two people, my wife and our son, literally loved me back to life. Off Switch was never meant to be a novel. It was meant to be a suicide note. When I sat in that little bamboo shack alone because Dearly would take the baby to her mother's, allowing me time to write without interruption, so I can't write if there's people around, especially kids, I fully intended to use that notebook and those ink pens to leave my note, the one they'd find and cry about and ask themselves why they hadn't done more, etc. But it became a book. It became a book that allowed me to let it all out. It became a book that allowed me to begin healing. And Dearly's belief in me was the seed that grew into a mighty oak's worth of healing. Nearly 10 years as of this writing, so this would have been 5 or 6 years ago, has passed since that day in October when I moved into the deep, dark jungles of the Philippines with a hungry baby and a hungry woman and a hungry belly, convinced I would never see the U.S. again. I honestly believe that, folks. I used to cry thinking I would never see this great nation again. Never thought I'd get back. I had no help. I didn't have parents with money. My parents hate me. They wouldn't help me even if they had money. If it was to be, it was up to me. That's it, okay? And Dearly and Daniel. Today, we own a piece of property nestled in the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains just outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, that is bigger than the entire neighborhood in which I grew up. We live in a house on our property that is far too big for the three of us and a far cry from that little bamboo hut in Mindanao. We have a pond full of catfish, bass, and sunfish. We have gardens and we have fruit orchards that we planted ourselves. Hell, a couple of months ago, we went out and bought ourselves a brand new pickup truck. And oh yes, we have running water and electricity now too. Today our needs are met and we want for nothing. Our cups runneth over. All credit, aside from being given to God, is also given to one person and one person only. And no, it's not me, the writer. It's the writer's wife. True story. So today's her birthday. What I get her for her birthday, I mentioned the truck we bought when I was writing this book. As you know, if you've been following this year for Mother's Day, Dearly, having finally gotten her driver's license after 9 years of not driving, got a brand new Mercedes-Benz, and she looks so cute in it. It's a beautiful little metallic blue car. So it's her birthday. What did she get? We were having problems with our kitchen floor. It was sinking in, and it needed fixed. It was structural damage. It was very important. It wasn't urgent. This was an issue that needed fixed for about 3 years before we finally got it fixed. It was getting gradually worse, but I wanted to fix it a certain way because it was going to cost tens of thousands of dollars to fix it. And I told Dearly, honey, we can fix it now, but we're going to have to borrow money to do it. I can get a personal loan at interest, or because I just didn't have enough cash reserves built up at the time, 3 or 4 years ago when the problem started. I said, or we could dip into our home equity, which, we're trying to pay our house off. I want to be 53 and debt-free. I'm 51. I'll be 52 next month. I'm on pace to be 53, completely debt-free. And yes, your mortgage is debt. Middle-class yuppie types, okay? So anyway, I said, or we could wait. You know, our income goes up year after year. We're paying off any debt that we do have that we did incur with just coming to America with a suitcase and a kid and having to kind of, get started from scratch. Me at 40 something years old. If we wait a few years, I believe we can have these renovations done and we'll be able to pay cash when we do. And if you're willing to wait, we'll not just get the floor fixed, but I'll completely renovate your entire new kitchen for you. She said, okay. She didn't care. And a lot of this too, it's cultural and it's her mindset. She knows the difference between a want and a need. Well, it sounds to me like Bigfoot Sasquatch came out to deliver a very special message on this very special day. Him, her, it, or they are out there saying happy birthday to Dearly is what it sounds like to me. So anyway, her birthday, we got the structural damage repaired on the house, brand new floor, but she also got the kitchen entirely renovated, brand new, all appliances, okay? But since I'd had that plan for a few years and I knew that this was her birthday, that kind of surprised her last week. I said, all right, I got to get you something for your birthday. She's like, no, you've given me enough this year. You got me a new Mercedes Benz. You completely renovated the kitchen. No more gifts. Yeah, don't I have it good? Don't I have it good? I got friends whose wives are so demanding. They go out and buy stuff that costs thousands upon thousands of dollars and don't even tell them, and come home, and when their husbands question about it, they tell them, I deserve it, and challenge them to say anything about it. That's called financial infidelity, by the way, which is grounds for a divorce. But anyway, she's like, no more gifts. I said, honey, it's your birthday. I want to take you and buy you a brand new set of living room furniture. And she's like, no, I said, yeah, let's do it. And so we did. So I took her out last week. So she's got everything new in the kitchen. And now she's got everything brand new in the living room to go with it. And while we're at the furniture store, she walked by a dining table and chairs that she liked. And I said, well, take that too. So she's got an entire brand new dining room, furniture, living room, and a brand new kitchen. That's what she got for her birthday. And she deserves every stinking bit of it. And I asked her what she wanted next. And she said a house in the Philippines. I said, let's buy that next summer. And we're going to when we're over there next summer. Makes sense anyway. We spend so much time over there. May as well have a permanent place to go to rather than constantly. And I like where we stay, 5-star resorts, but, whatever. We save a little jing by having a house. So, folks, I hope you enjoyed this story. Listen, if you have someone in your life who supports you unconditionally, wholly, and fully so that you can be the best you that you can be, do them a favor and do yourself a favor by not being entitled and coming across as just a jerk. Support them equally. If they love you 110%, love them back 110%. They support you 110%, you support them 110%. There's this thing that really ruins marriages, especially in America. It's a saying. They say happy wife, happy life. No, it's happy spouse, happy house. It takes two, okay? I am so fortunate. First time around, I didn't have that piece of the puzzle that fit. She wasn't a bad person by any means, and I was not perfect for her. I found that fit this time. I found what was missing that now makes me whole, and I couldn't imagine having a more fantastic life. And again, it's not because I'm awesome. It's because of my wife, the writer's wife. Hope you enjoyed this story. See y'all for more next time.